Hey there, my name is Nick Lalonde. I'm the owner of Third Act Wealth Management, and I'm on a mission to find out why some high achievers really enjoy retirement and some don't. I recently got introduced to Ann Fish. She's the Executive Director of Benefits at Northwestern University, and I felt so energized coming away from this conversation. There was a few things that I noticed as I talked to Ann about her retirement journey that I felt like she did really well. One of the things that really stuck out to me about Ann is she already has a plan. Ann shared with me that she has an LLC formed and that she's already put feelers out there with friends to identify who might be a potential client. She said she's gotten a lot of hits so far. The second thing that stuck out to me about Ann is she really knew what she needed from work. So initially when I asked her, hey, why are you going to do the consulting? She said, Nick, I have a need to have bucket, a nice to have bucket, but I have a third bucket out there called luxurious travel. And she said, consulting is going to fund the luxurious travel. And I said, okay, money aside, let's say you had all the money in the world, would you still work? And she said, yeah, I think I would. And when I asked her why, she said, I really value mental stimulation in my work. The third thing that really stuck out to me about Ann is she knew when enough was enough. So about a year ago, she started diving into her budget. She started looking at what she'd have coming in from different income sources. She also looked at her investments and she figured out, hey, I can do this. But so many of the people she works with, the faculty that are 75, 80 years old, a lot of them have never gone through the exercise of figuring out when is enough enough. And they still work because of that. They think that freedom of income, freedom of time is not something that's for them. I hope you enjoyed this interview as much as I did and take away one or two golden nuggets. Tell me a little bit about you. What do you do for work? How did you get into that line of work?
Sure. So today I'm the Executive Director of Benefits at Northwestern University. I've been here, it'll be almost 15 years in February. And I got into this line of work sort of in a circuitous manner. My whole professional career has really been in the employee benefits world. Early on, it was working for insurance companies. I was with Prudential in the early days. And then I pivoted very quickly to being in the corporate space. And so really being a benefits manager and really directing and selecting the benefits that we would offer to our employees. I found that fascinating. I loved it. But I also started to get a little restless. I was getting bored. And so then I moved into benefits consulting. And when I moved to Mercer, so took a consulting role, found that really interesting because suddenly you're not working for one corporation, you're working for a myriad of clients. Some that are great and they're fun to work with. Others are, clients from hell. You'd rather never work with them again, except that they pay their bills. So that's a good thing. So yeah. I worked with Mercer then for a number of years. Until end of 2008, early 2009, when we were hit with this pretty sizable recession. And basically Mercer looked at their consultants and started at the very top in terms of those who were principals and were really big pay, big salaries, and started just cutting. And I then moved into my current position in February of 2009. I think it was sort of a safety move on my part because I had been enjoying consulting, but it's also a pretty risky business. It is also, you have to have those billable hours. And if you don't, you better find out how you get those billable hours. And so I started to reflect on, well, what did I really like about my career? And I liked building a team. I love the employee benefits world and I love collaborating with team and being in a team lead role. So that's why I came back to my roots, if you will, and the opportunity at Northwestern kind of just emerged through a recruiter who reached out to me and said, hey, would you be interested? And, Northwestern, I live maybe 30 minutes door to door from Northwestern. So it was a very easy commute, didn't have to relocate or anything like that. And so we said, sure, let's talk and go from there. And so that's kind of where I ended up. Um, so yeah, does that help?
Yeah, yeah, that's amazing. So tell me about your retirement journey.
Yeah. So I have been thinking about retirement for, I would say, 2 or 3 years. My husband is retired already.
Okay.
Um, he's happily retired, but he's a totally different individual than I am, meaning that he's content to get up, have a very leisurely breakfast, maybe take a walk to the library to get some more books, maybe not, and then reads. He reads voraciously. Um, have meals at the prescribed times. We travel as much as we are able to based on my work schedule.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but he's much more sedentary than I am. And so discipline wise, I started thinking a couple of years ago, well, what do I want to do? When do I want to call it quits? What's my game plan here?
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I would say that, I'm just on the cusp now of end of the year. That's it. I'm done, but I'm not done. I'm
Right.
done with working in an office, leading a team, reporting to a CHRO, dealing with all the politics that you deal with in any organization. I'm done with all that, but I still want to focus on employee benefits. And that's my thing, is to very selective engagements in employee benefits or
Hmm.
strategic HR work, um, in a consultative manner. So that's what I'm going to be doing. And initially, I was a little bit nervous, thinking, well, this is pie in the sky thinking, and who's going to hire you? Um,
Mm.
uh, are you really serious about it? So you got to make sure that you're not going to rely on that income. And
Yeah.
so I got to the point where, like, okay, I'm good. I'm not going to rely on, I don't need to bring in, say, $1,000 a week or a month or whatever. I can just, whatever I make, I make. If I don't make anything that month,
Mm.
so be it. So that was an important sort of milestone to really crunch numbers and make sure that I was going to be comfortable and not have to absolutely rely on it. What I've found in the last few months of very cursory reaching out to people, networking, is that there's a lot of opportunity out there. There are a lot of people who have said, I would love to work with you right now. And I'm like, well, I'm not available right now. Sorry. Let's talk in
Yeah.
January, February. Um, so there's just a lot of opportunity for, it's going back to, the gig economy, as we've all heard about, right? Companies don't necessarily want to hire a consultant that's high priced, that they really have to have, a long-term relationship with. What they want to do is sort of plug and play. They want to put the person in on the ground to solve a problem. Maybe it's going to take 3 months and then
Mm.
exit and not have long-term engagements. And so, that's been interesting because that's kind of what I'm looking for. I'm not looking for these long, involved, you know, working 40, 50, 60 hours a week. That's not what I'm looking for. So it's kind of interesting. I obviously haven't done it yet. I haven't
Yeah.
proven that, in fact, it's out there, but I've had a lot of people either on their own reach out to me based on my LinkedIn post, or people that I've just sort of thought, okay, organically, there's a connection here. I see it. And so I'll just ping them and see if they want to talk. And they're like, absolutely, let's talk. Let's get on the calendar, da da da. So it's been interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. So tell me the exact moment then that you said, okay, I'm transitioning out of what I'm doing today into this consulting role. I know you said it started 2 or 3 years ago.
Yeah. Yeah. It definitely started 2 to 3 years ago. And, in the beginning, there was a lot of fear. Like, do you really think you can do this? Like, let's put the numbers down. Let's figure out what
Mm.
you really need to pay the bills. Um, and so I did some of that on my own, talked to my husband about it. And he was like, whatever you want to do, it's up to you.
Yeah.
Um, a year ago, we had a change of leadership and we got a new CHRO, maybe a year and a half ago. And at that time, I felt like, okay, once she has some time to get her feet on the ground, then I'll
Mm.
have a discussion with her. So I've been completely transparent. She knows what my timing is. And so I think once I went public with her about a year ago, about a year, let's see, this is October. So it was about 15 months ago that I told her that my plan is to retire. And her first reaction was like, wow, when? And I was like 12 to 18 months, something like that. She's like, oh, okay. So then once again, this year in June, because June is performance review time, had a similar conversation. Hey, remember we talked about this, Lorraine? She was like, oh, yeah. What is your timing? And I said, the end of the year. And she was like, the end of this year? The end of this year. So she was like, okay. So I think that moment this year, so in June of this year, was sort of my day of reckoning when I publicly said to her. And then we talked about a communication plan, when we would talk about it more broadly within the university, within HR, and so forth. I think the next point of reckoning for me was probably in the end of September when my job was posted. So my new position was posted, and I went, oh, okay, yeah, that's me. So then after that, I was like, okay, I got to update my LinkedIn profile. I had to put something out there so people don't think, oh, what's happening to her, you know?
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. I love that you're able to be so transparent with your employer and let them know, hey, this is what I'm thinking. Sounds like a couple things. One, there were some changes at work that enabled you to feel like, hey, I can step away from this. They're going to be okay. The second thing I heard though is you felt like the numbers worked for you to leave. How did you know enough was enough? I find that's really hard for high achievers. They're making more money easier than they've ever made it, but they don't always know when enough is enough. How did you know?
Right. I mean, I basically looked at all my expenses today and put them in, two categories: the essentials and then the nice to have. And did the sums on a monthly basis. And I took even the annual expenses that I have and factored them into over 12 months. So for example, property insurance, I pay for my property insurance for my house and everything once a year. But I basically said, all right, divide it over 12 months so you make sure you're accounting for all these big ticket items, real estate taxes, things like that. And I plopped them all in and then looked at what I would be getting in the way of Social Security. I do have a small pension, IRA. And then, I've been able to save. You've got a 403B and a 457B and so forth. So then I was like, I think this is doable without actually having to draw down any principal in terms of the assets that we've accumulated. So I thought, okay, this could work. So I think it was that, I think because I'm in higher education, I'm accustomed to talking with a lot of faculty who are 75, 80 years old, and they are still teaching. They just have this feeling that they can't do it. They cannot leave. And I'm like, well, you can really. You have a very large Fidelity account or TIAA account. I know the numbers, so you really can do it. Part of what also trips people up is not only the wealth side of it, but it's the medical, it's the healthcare side. It's the transition from employer-sponsored group health insurance to going out on your own and making a decision of, do I do a Medicare Advantage? Do I do a Medicare supplement? What should I do? And what do these look like? All I know is all these letters, right? But I don't know which is going to be best for me. So I probably spent a few months on again, off again, researching and doing that, even though it's my field. When you suddenly are thinking about it for yourself and a spouse, you look at it a little differently. So I still have to get Part B Medicare and all that sort of thing, but I've got the stuff in the works. And then I have to, once I transition out of group insurance, then select a Part B, and then obviously Part D for the drug plan. So kind of wrapping my head around that was another moment that I had to sort of cross over, because I was like, oh, this is just too complicated. And that's what people who are here well into their 70s and 80s that's what they do. They just like, I just can't decide about
Wow. Wow. So if I heard you correctly, you are working not because you have to for money, you're working because you want to. And you're going to work on smaller engagements. You'd like to do consulting ideally. How
that.
many hours a week are you working then? Is it 10 hours a week? Is it 20
In
hours a
my
week?
future state, in my future state.
Future
In
state.
my future state, I would say I could easily see 20 to 30 hours a week.
Okay.
Um, and then there might be weeks that, it moves down to 5 to 10, but I don't really want to do, I don't want to do an enormous amount of travel. I
Okay.
don't want to do a 40 to 60 hour with a lot of pressure and a lot of, regular deadlines. I mean, every now and then you can ramp up and do that for say a month or two, but I don't want it to become the norm because
Right.
that's like just doing another job.
Yeah. So why? I mean, what's it all for then?
Oh, what's it all for is to travel, to do
Yeah.
some luxurious traveling.
So you're going to work extra to fund some of the luxurious travel that you'd like to do.
Yeah, precisely. Yeah.
So when you ran your budget, you said, "Hey, here's the need to have, here's the nice to have," and then luxurious travel was its own category.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
that's why we would do some consulting to cover that bill.
Precisely.
What other reasons might you work though? What do you feel like work gives you
Yeah.
today other than
Yeah.
money and financial
Yeah.
security?
So I think certainly mental stimulation is important to
Mhm.
me. Um, Definitely mental stimulation, not having just limitless amounts of time in front of me where I have no required, where nothing is required of me. That would not work well with me. Just my personality. I like structure. Um, I like to have some sense of purpose in what I'm doing. Um,
Mhm.
but at the same time, one could say, well, why don't you just go and volunteer then? But I'm a little bit of a capitalist there. I don't want to just give away all of my time. My time has value to it.
Yeah.
It's not limitless, and there's value to it. So I do want to monetize my time and not just volunteer. But I can see there's a couple of um, areas that I am interested in, like mothers and children, and there's a shelter
Mhm.
north of where I live that I've done some volunteer work there already. Um, they love people to bring meals for their population, and they have a gala every year and things like that. So I think aligning myself with one or more volunteer opportunities like that would be of interest too. But largely it's the mental stimulation. It's
Mhm.
just wanting to stay engaged and stay current with what I've already been doing for quite a number of years.
I'm curious, you mentioned that you work with lots of professors and faculty that are 75, 80 years old, and they just can't seem to leave. Do you
Right.
think that they're aging better because they're staying mentally engaged at that age?
Aging better physically, you mean? Yeah.
Just overall, right? I think
Yeah.
physically it come down to what do you eat, what are you
Yeah.
doing for physical exercise, but just mental health. Do you think
I definitely think there's a relationship there that if you stay in something, if you pursue something, and these faculty members, there's very little separation between their identity and their job. It's all interwoven with faculty. In other
mm,
words, if I'm teaching Slavic language studies or something, that's something that I've been involved with for maybe 45, 50 years of my life. I did my dissertation in it and all this kind of thing. And so it's all so connected that it does absolutely, when somebody then does decide to stop, when a faculty member does decide to stop, um, they have to figure out what's next and go through that. What am I going to do with my time? And that again is one of those decision points. Well, forget it. I won't even bother. I'm tenured. Nobody's going to get rid of me. So I can just keep working as long as the
yeah,
students like me. So I do think that it has a direct correlation to good health overall. Absolutely. I
Mhm.
mean, sure, you're going to get things hitting at you, whether it's, I talked to a faculty member yesterday, and, he's got his own health issues that he's managing, but he's managing them. And mentally, he's very sharp. He's 75 years old, loves working with the students. And I do think it keeps him far more engaged and far more current by listening to what they're doing, 18 to 22-year-olders. And yeah, I absolutely think that it helps. Mhm.
Do you feel yourself running into some of those same issues that other faculty have when they separate from what they do?
I think until I've sort of thought it through and landed on this idea of consulting, yeah,
Yes.
I struggled a lot for many, many months with, well, what are you going to do in your time?
Mm.
I have two adult children, and my daughter in particular was like, well, what are you going to do? You can't just sit around doing nothing. You'll go crazy.
Yeah.
Don't come over to my house and bother me. That
Yeah.
was the inference, right? Um, and so I think, I think knowing that and, kind of landing on a path forward makes sense to me. Yeah.
Yeah. And remind me, when is your last day?
Um, I've officially said 12/31, but it's probably going to be the first week or two in January. I have offered to help with transition. And one of my direct reports has applied for the position. So if he gets it, it
Hmm.
becomes it's going to be an easier transition for him. Whereas if they hire from outside, it could be February before I'm wound down. So
Have you and your husband had a conversation at all with, I mean, today you come into the office, you're probably working at least 40 hours a week, if not more.
yeah,
Have you all had a conversation of the fact that you guys are now going to be at home?
we have from time to time, but I think because we have been traveling, that
Yeah.
when you travel, you're kind of like stuck together, right? We did an Alaska cruise at the end of August, early September, and it was actually a lot of fun. We really enjoyed it. And he said to me afterwards, I really feel a lot closer to you because of that cruise. And I was like,
Hmm.
oh, good to know. I mean, that was his own observation. And this is not a guy that is like, in my opinion, is really in touch with his emotions and feelings.
Yeah.
So, but he kind of came out with that on his own. I was like, well, that's good to know. And I mean, and we were literally together like virtually all the time. But we don't drive each other crazy. I think we've just, we've been together a long time. And so I think we've just got accustomed to each other's style and quirks. And, you just learn to give people grace and, move
Mm.
forward.
Where do you find community today?
Where do I find?
Where do you find community today?
Yeah, that's a great question. Um, I find community today with my family for
Okay.
sure. So starting there, um, certainly my immediate family, and then even beyond that with, nephews, nieces, things like that. I find community with professionals that I work with today. So peers of mine in other universities, we meet up at conferences, that kind of thing. So there's a community, there's definitely a sense of solidarity and that we're all in this together kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, I mean, I can't say church because I don't go to church.
Yeah.
Um, but I would say, a sense of community is something that I've thought about too, whether, I'm going to find a void there and say, what can I build? But so far, it's been amazing. Just, people reaching out to me and people commenting. And so we'll see.
Yeah. Where do you think you'll find it in retirement? Will it be through your work? Will it
I
continue to be
think
through?
so. Yeah, I think it'll be through my work and then continue through family, obviously. Yeah.
And you don't yet know what that consulting role will look like. It's still kind of abstract. You just know you want to move into consulting, correct? And
Right.
there's people who
Right.
reached today, and we would love to have you. We think you could be a good fit for this. Now,
Right.
you going to be an employee for someone? Are you going to be running your own business in this case, where you're 1099, you take on the projects you want for the amount of time you want?
Exactly, the latter. Yeah, I already have an LLC that I formed.
Okay.
I'm just going to be me. No, I'm not going to hire people. So it will be a 1099 engagement with a letter of agreement that, here's the terms and conditions, that kind of thing. I've
Yes.
got an attorney that fly specs everything that I've done thus far. Um, just in sort of the preparatory stage. So exactly, it will be like I'll be brought in as a subject matter expert. I don't want to do a lot of marketing myself. I have thought about, well, should I create a website and everything? And I'm not crazy about that. I might have to, but right now I'm not. I'm hoping that by networking with people, I can get enough opportunities that come my way and I can say, yeah, that sounds great. I have the bandwidth to do that. I can go really deep on that topic, or, no, it's not something that I can really talk about or have an opinion on. And, or we need to bring in outside counsel to help us on that. So I think I have enough skills and enough knowledge and enough experience that I can decide and pick
Mhm.
from things that really resonate with my background.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Yeah.
it's a strictly a 1099 payment.
So when I ask people, what they would like to do in retirement, I hear consulting an awful lot. Why do you think that is? Why is that such a popular?
Yeah. Um, why? I think it's because if you have confidence in what you've accomplished, I think it's popular because you can decide the level of engagement at any given time that you want. And you can today work remotely. I mean, we all learned how to work remotely in 2020 and 2021.
Mhm.
So we know we can do it. Um, and I do think you can decide how much or how little you want to engage with the topic. What I think is the challenge with some people is they say, oh, yeah, I'm going to do some consulting. And it kind of stops there. And they don't realize, okay, I need to figure out how am I going to generate revenue as a result
Mm,
of consulting? I mean, because you can consult, but if you don't have a letter of engagement, if you don't have some sort of a financial arrangement, either with an accountant or that somebody's going to be paying your income taxes on your behalf. If you don't have a little bit of infrastructure, you're going to have some issues down the road.
yeah.
So I think that's important. Um, so I do think it's appealing to a lot of people. In fact, I've run into others who have said, oh yeah, I have a really good friend. His father retired and he goes into roles as an interim CFO. So he had been, an illustrious CFO at an organization, big company, retired.
Mm.
And it might have been a package they gave him. I don't really know the terms of his retirement, but he does interim work now and, has enough opportunities to just be an interim CFO. It could be a situation where they've had an abrupt separation. It could be where somebody's retired and they need a backfill. So, it could be a 2 month, it could be a 6 month engagement. And he loves it. That's what he does. Goes around the country, they pick up expenses and travel expenses and that kind of thing.
So let's say you had a big bucket of money that covered all of your luxurious travel. Would you still do consulting?
Yeah. Yeah.
You would.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I just give away more money.
I love it. I
I
love it. So
still
tell me
do
about
it.
that then. So there's something there that I feel like we haven't quite uncovered yet. I heard you say, Nick, community, that's a great question. I get it through family. I'm not really involved in like church or any organizations where I would get it. And so we had talked about how community will likely be found through your work engagements. So it sounds like relationships, right? You'll seek uh, through this new
Correct.
endeavor. Sounds like it's also a place to go. I mean, if you're at home all day, sounds like you'd be very bored, right?
Mhm.
So your husband is a voracious reader. He can read all day, but for you, you need to be engaged. I heard mental stimulation.
Right.
So that's one of the biggest things that you shared with me.
Yeah.
So is there anything else that you feel like uh, is the reason why you would work and why you would maybe go this consulting path that maybe we've missed so far?
Um, I don't think so. I mean, even if I had, like you said, buckets and buckets of money and I had no need for, an account that would just fund luxurious vacations, I'd still do it just to keep myself occupied,
Yeah.
just to keep myself going, a reason to get up in the morning and get out of bed. I mean, real
Mm-hmm.
simple basics, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, in the morning, I'm of course up, the alarm goes off because I got to get moving, right? I got a day ahead of me, I work. And so it's a little scary to think about the fact that, well, what would happen if I didn't? If I didn't have a job to do? What
Mm-hmm.
then? I could stay in bed all day. I mean, some people might love that idea. That would be like, oof, no.
Yeah.
So it would not work for me.
I think it's important too. When I sit down with people and I ask them, hey, what does retirement look like for you? People say, oh, Nick, I'm going to travel all over the world and I'm going to play golf 5 days a week. And I say, hey,
Right,
that's all great, but that makes up like this much of your retirement. So I
right,
think we really need to solve for Tuesday. And what I mean by that is that we have to solve for the monotony. We have to solve for what does the majority of your retirement look like. I think oftentimes we coin it as the golden years where it's just this endless vacation.
right.
So walk me through just a typical day in retirement. What time are you waking up? How are you spending your time? When do you go to bed? Have you
Yeah.
thought about that?
Yeah, I have. I've thought a little bit about it. So I'm generally up by 6:30. I would imagine I'll continue to get up at 6:30, and I'm really regular about having my breakfast, the same breakfast every day, and it's just a pattern that I've been in for decades. And what I imagine then is once I'm dressed, I would just go to my office. I have a home office that's really quite nice, nicely furnished, bought a new steel case chair, the whole 9 yards. And I would immediately check email. What's out there? What's come in overnight? I mean, right now I'm checking two emails. I'm checking my personal email. I'm checking my work email. So, okay, future state, I'm only going to be checking my personal email because I don't have a northwestern.edu any longer.
Yeah.
So I would go through that. Um, I might reach out to people if I haven't heard from somebody, somebody who's expressed interest and said, yeah, let's stay connected. I might have a point of saying, okay, let's reach out. Hey, I haven't heard from you. Do you want to have coffee? That kind of thing. Set some things up on the calendar. This is assuming I have no work yet. I'm still brand new at this. I would also make a point daily of getting out and exercising. Right now, I am like such a slog about exercising. I walk, but I need to do more than that, and I know it. I need to either have a serious practice of yoga or weight bearing exercises. And so I would really commit to an exercise program. And so in the middle of the day, I would, by like 10:30, 11 o'clock in the morning, I really want to move. And so I generally try to get a walk in when I'm working from home at about that time of the day, a good 45-minute walk. And that would be one early form of exercise that I would make a commitment to do every day. I have a treadmill in the basement, so if the weather is, really horrible, I could just walk on the treadmill. Um, so I think then, the afternoon might be a little bit more leisurely. I love to bake. Baking is my obsession. So I bake bread. I like to bake cookies and things like that. So I would probably try to work in more baking than I do today because I just don't have the time today to do as much. And even if it means baking and giving it away to people, that's fine too. I like to do that.
Yeah.
Um, and then generally I'd probably say, I like to cook dinner. We tend to have dinner at the house most nights versus going out to dinner. And so I would prepare dinner for, 5:30, 6 o'clock, clean up, read after dinner. We're not huge television watchers, even though we have TVs all over the house. I'm like, one of my things I would love to do is figure out how to cut the cable. So my husband's the one that's like, oh, you can't do that because of blah, blah, blah. So we would then have a leisurely evening, read, that kind of thing, maybe take a walk if it's nice weather. And generally, I'm in bed by 10-ish, 10:30, something like that. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
When you think about retirement, what 3 things are you most excited about?
I am most excited about leaving behind what I consider silly minutia in the workplace. So, I've been around the block enough to know that certain things are just not important, and yet others might say, oh, no, we have to solve for blah, blah, blah. So I'm like, whatever, okay. So what I call silly minutia. And looking forward to letting go of that stuff. And that's like, again, the whole politics of being in an organization. I'm looking forward to just being my own person, being my own contributor, and not relying on other people to say, okay, well, you work on this section of it, or, you prepare that document and I'll review it. And then I'll start realizing that person didn't do as good a job as I liked. So being my own person and my own deliverables. And I think just the last is really just having the time to just be. If I want to just be and take up a new hobby or something like that, I can do that. I've got time to do that. And I certainly, travel luxuriously.
Yeah.
Assuming I'm making some money at this.
Yeah. What are 3 concerns? Maybe as you look at retirement, what are things that come to mind?
Concerns. That I could get bored. Because I can get bored pretty easily. So boredom. Or that's one. The second is that I find that I hate consulting. And I really be like, I really don't like this. I don't know what I was thinking. And then suddenly I've got to have another plan because I need to have something. So what's my plan B if I hate consulting? I don't think it will happen, but it is a bit of a concern.
Yeah.
And the third would be, I suppose, if my husband and I start ready to kill each other, just too much proximity, but I don't think it's a real concern, but I can be pretty critical, and being around him all day, I could be like, well, why don't you do this? We call it the honey-do list. I'll be like, do you have it on your list? Why didn't you do it?
Yes.
So that's my other concern.
Yeah, those are good. That's super helpful. So when you think about your journey, and you said, Nick, it was kind of grueling, right? I mean, there was a few months there where you were thinking, what am I going to do? So as you reflect on your journey, were there any aha moments? Were there any breakthroughs, as you were going through that journey?
I think there was one moment when, after I did all my number crunching and my essentials and my nice to have and how am I going to get money coming in, and I was like, wow, I could really make this happen. I mean, I had gone through my account statements, my debit card statements, like, okay, where are the expenses that I just really forgot about, that I've got? And I've pretty much accounted for everything. And so that was kind of an aha moment that this could work financially. It could work. What else? I think the fact that there have been as many overtures from people who have connected with me and said, hey, I've got some ideas for you. I want to introduce you to this person. I think you two could really work well together. some of those things have been like, wow, this is just amazing. I did not expect people to just kind of come out, people I've known for a long time, and they're just like, I can connect you with this person, and she does a lot of work with private equity and blah blah blah. So I'm
Yeah.
like, wow, amazing.
And I feel like you're so youthful. You still have your best years ahead of you, it sounds like. But how old are you today?
How old am I?
Yes.
70.
So you're 70. I mean, I feel like you could work another 10 years.
So
How do you feel? Do you feel like how many more years do you think you have ahead of you for this
got
consulting?
another 10 to 12 years doing this. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I think so too. I think
I
so
mean,
too.
when I first talked to Lorraine, my supervisor, a year ago, and gave her this vision. This is what I'm going to do. This is the timing. And she's looking at me, and I was like, Lorraine, I'm going to be 70 in January. Come on. She was like, what? She couldn't believe it. She was like, and I'm like, yeah, it's time, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Not everyone works till 70 though. What do you think kept you in the role that you're in today versus doing consulting years ago? Why not consulting at 65? Was it you just became financially independent maybe in the last few years to where the numbers worked, or was it more based out of fear of just kind of making that leap? What was it?
It was more that I was having a really good time doing what I've been doing. There was a lot of autonomy in that, I could make these recommendations to our very senior leader and have them, oh yeah, that's a great idea. Go for it. So I think there was just a lot of feedback, a lot of pleasure in what I was doing.
Mm,
And so that's why the idea of moving to consulting is it was just like, I mean, at the end of the day, in 2008, I was laid off because of the recession. And so there's a little bit of gut check. Do I want to go down that road again? And definitely until I could figure out like the whole healthcare, how am I going to have insurance, or what's Medicare look like, and all that stuff. So
yeah. Yeah. And you were 55 at the time, and I mean just reinvented yourself even going into this role and having a lot
right,
of success.
right.
That's pretty amazing. Is there anything that you wish you would have done differently or you wish you would have done sooner, knowing what you know now?
I do think there's a lot of ageism in the
Mm,
workforce today. Um, and I think that, I don't know how that's going to impact me in consulting. I,
mm,
I'm guessing it will not, but it is something that I've thought a lot about because I do feel like there's a lot of ageism that employers are saying that they want to retain their best and their smartest. And so if they're in their 60s, so what? Sometimes I'm thinking that's a little bit of lip service. But the reality is, those are the people, if they're still pretty engaged and pretty with it, those are the people that have the knowledge that you really
mm.
need to pass on to the next cohort of people coming up the ranks. Um, so, no, I don't think anything that I would have done differently. No.
Mhm. What else should I have asked you there that I didn't ask you,
Um, I think you've asked everything. I mean, it feels like it's therapy.
Ann?
No, I
Well,
think you've asked just about everything.
I've had a lot of fun walking through this with you, and truly, I'm learning so much as I'm sitting down with folks and just asking them these questions and getting inside the mind of high achievers. So it's been a lot of fun.
Yeah,
There's seven things that I wrote down that I think um, are important considerations to ask ourselves before you retire, and this is from having interviewed over 20 people at this point. So the
wow.
first thing that I would share with you is what does work provide me instead of money, or what does work provide
In
me outside of
addition
money
to,
and financial
yeah,
security?
yeah,
I think that's really important. And it's not that work providing you those things is a bad thing. It's only a bad thing if you don't know what work provides you.
right.
how do you fill that void in retirement? And you think about it, you talked about the faculty going cold turkey, and then all of a sudden, right, life may feel meaningless, or they may feel like they lost a community or a place to go or routine
Right,
to their very important. I think one of the things we talked about is where will I find mental stimulation? That's a big deal. And
right,
we talk a lot about exercising, we talk a lot about eating healthy, but I don't think we talk enough about what will our retirees do for mental stimulation.
right,
And people that I see age the best are the ones that have things that provide mental stimulation.
right.
So I think
Completely
that's really
agree with you
important.
here. Yeah,
The third thing I'll write down, this is one that I'd want you to think about maybe in a little bit more detail, just in hearing from you. And this is really hard for a lot of my high achievers. You know, they're so busy, they're so busy pouring into their work that oftentimes they don't always think about their life in general, but where will I find community outside of work? And a lot of my high achievers, if I were to say, hey, do you have 5 friends that you could call, right, who would drop everything for you? They'd say, well, I might have one, I might have two, but I don't know that I have five, right?
right.
So, so community, what I could see you doing is just staying engaged in some of those like industry related conferences and things of that nature.
Right.
Um, it'll double almost as like mental stimulation and community at the same time.
Yeah.
Um, a fourth one though, and I think this one in we touched on it lightly, and when I asked you about some of your concerns, and then you mentioned your husband's comment, is it sounds like you guys he's at home and he's probably set into his routine. You've been in the workplace. And so I find, we're just creatures of habit, right? Doesn't matter if we love our spouse, doesn't matter if we've been with him for 40 years,
Mhm.
when we re-enter the workplace and we're around each other 24/7, there's just naturally a conversation about boundaries that has to
Yeah.
be had. So
Right.
that's something that I talk to a lot of high achieving pre-retirees is, hey, you've been in the workplace 40, 60 hours a week. This is going to be a tough transition potentially. Not
Right.
always.
Right.
Um,
Right. No,
but
I
definitely.
agree with you. I think there's the potential for just a friction, right? And
Yeah.
I mean, I'm accustomed to being able to ask different people on my team for certain things. We always say, okay, what's a good date that I can get that? Or here's what I need it with by this date. And so the expectations are set and they're met by these people. With my husband, it doesn't work that way. So when I come home, I've got to like switch gears quite a bit to make sure
Yes.
that I'm not like treating him like one of my staff. Because I mean, it would be like game over. I'm out of here, you know.
Yeah, yeah, you're so right. You're so right. This is something that so many high achievers I talk to say, hey, that was a little bit of a struggle. Another thing that I wrote down is how will I spend my typical day in retirement? And what I call it is solving for Tuesday. What is my Tuesday in retirement going to look like? Because so often it's the golden years like we had discussed. And
Right,
so really going into retirement knowing, okay, if I am consulting, what's the typical amount of hours? I know that can be more project and engagement based, where
right,
you might work 2 months, pretty hard on a project, and then maybe you have 2 months where you don't work on a project. But I think that's an interesting consideration. The last though, and this is where I think your plan really opened up. And this is where I think you started to be able to dream and have some possibilities here and live a life where you get to exercise some freedoms is when you found out when is enough. And
right,
so a lot of my high achievers, they're making really good money. It's easy money. But at some point, there comes a time where they say, okay, my time is worth more than money.
right, right, right,
And
right.
and so I've had folks where they have that realization in their 40s. I have folks that have that realization in their 60s, but
Yeah,
oftentimes they have to feel like their lifestyle needs are met before they're at that point.
right. Yeah. No, that's a really good observation. That time is worth more. You know, I mean, we all have a finite amount of time. We're not going to be here forever. So it's kind of like, what do I want to do with my next phase? So yeah.
You got it. You got it. Well, this has been a lot of fun. I've had so much
Yeah.
fun just to hear about your journey and and
Yeah.
and just walk through that with you and get in your mindset.
Yeah.
Um, but thank you for your time.